All right, welcome back to the YouTube channel as always. So today what I wanted to talk about is trauma, right? I think trauma is something that's bantered about a lot in culture and media, and it's just something that's often discussed, but I don't think fully understood. So today I really want to talk about how I approach trauma, how I conceive trauma, and how trauma can impact your life. Right? What trauma is, I think trauma, in the simplest way, or the most simplest description, is it's anything that overwhelms your ability to cope, right? So you don't have to be a combat veteran to have experienced trauma. Trauma can be experienced through watching something horrific. Trauma can be vicarious trauma, right? It can be somebody that has experienced something traumatic in your life, you're close to them, and then you get overwhelmed with their traumatic experience. Just to reiterate, trauma is anything that has overwhelmed your ability to cope or process with that, right? And the idea and the concept too of kind of capital T and lowercase t traumas, right? So big T or little t traumas is also helpful, right? So big T traumas can be something catastrophic like, a sexual assault, a rape, a horrific car accident, combat, right? If you're a veteran, something that is significantly overwhelming and really clinically impactful, right, would be considered maybe a big T trauma. But small T traumas can be that idea of like a death of 1,000 cuts, right? So neglect in the family that wasn't explicit and it wasn't direct, but those small traumas that overwhelmed your ability to cope over time led to, post-traumatic stress, right? And so in regards to post-traumatic stress, the idea is that the body keeps score of trauma, right? So Bessel van der Kolk, who's sort of the leading leading researcher, has a very well-written and exceptional book called The Body Keeps the Score, right? And it's about trauma and how the body processes it, handles it, and holds on to it, right? And post-traumatic stress really is just that your body has kept score of the traumas that have happened to you, and due maybe to avoidance or ignorance or fear, you have not done the work that allows the body to take an inventory of that trauma and to do what the body was designed to do, which is to heal from that trauma, right? But we as humans, we get in our own way, right? We get in our own way with fearing ever going back and re-experiencing that trauma with a therapist, or doing different somatic or body-oriented therapies and interventions that confront you with that pain that happened during the traumatic experience, right? But it's very important to underline that because the body keeps the score, the body is a debt collector that is undefeated. You can't outrun your traumatic experience. It will come up in all sorts of different ways. You can get very cunning with yourself at trying to avoid it, all right, with substance abuse or process addictions or different means, right? But the body will, in very creative ways, send the message up the flagpole that there's a trauma there to be processed. Sometimes that message can look like depression or anxiety or all sorts of different mental illness. So that's a little bit about what trauma is, and how I approach trauma in the office is really to work collaboratively with you in creating solutions that allow you to address that trauma, right? To be with and be present with that trauma, to accept the full feeling and the difficult experience that's coupled with that traumatic memory, right? And then for you and I to hand in hand create solutions that allow you to integrate that trauma, right? Oftentimes I hear, I just want to get over it, right? And so with trauma, I do believe that there really is no getting over it, but there is a really powerful integrating of that experience, right? So your body and your mind know that that trauma is something that happened in the past, but that you can use your resilience and your language to make meaning of that trauma and therefore heal and grow and integrate that trauma, right? Letting go of that post-traumatic experience and moving towards post-traumatic growth. Right? So we talk about PTSD all the time, post-traumatic stress disorder, but something that's not often talked about is post-traumatic growth. You can and you have the ability to grow and heal from your trauma. You are wired to do so. And working with a therapist who's trained in these sorts of interventions and modalities as far as clinically informed trauma care is an excellent path to get you towards that place. So that's a little bit about kind of what trauma is, how I approach trauma, and hopefully it leads to a little bit better understanding for you, or you can share this with a loved one who might be struggling from symptoms of post-traumatic stress. As always, I do believe I can help. Take care.